good? We recording? All right. All right, we'll go ahead and get started here then this morning. Welcome. It's good to see everybody. Good to see everybody here this morning. Let's go ahead and, as we typically do, let's get started by reviewing our core values. I like to start out with Jesus' number one core value, and that was that Jesus would always value people. Jesus valued people. Now, here at Cochran Community Church, we have 8 core values. Those core values are prayer, Bible, worship, community. I heard service, I heard stewardship. Relevancy and outreach. Beautiful. And then in this group, we have 2 core values. Those core values are growth and timeliness. And I've been trying to prep you because I think there's another value that we need to adopt. And I don't know if you're ready to adopt it yet. It'll come, but that core, anybody remember what that core value may potentially be? Add value to people. Like it's a whole sentence, right? Add value to people, right? It's a wonderful value to have. So, logistics is the next thing. On May 19th, I will be in the building, but I will probably not be teaching. As such, I have arranged for a special guest to potentially teach. And if this works out, it's going to knock your socks off. So I'll tell you right now, tell your friend, tell your neighbor, tell your neighbor's friend you want to be here on May 19th. Okay, so just give you, now it's also possible that this completely falls apart, but as of right now, I'm reasonably confident that you're going to have literally a rock star here to help teach the lesson on May 19th. We also then the following week, I believe it turns out, is Church in the Park, so there is no class on that day. I have tried just like pulling people aside and under a different pavilion or something to teach. It wasn't real comfortable. So as it is right now, there will be no class that week of May 26th. And I potentially do have a stunt double for June 9th. I will not be here June 9th. But I think I have found a stunt double. However, if you are interested in stunt doubling, if you have a lesson that you think needs to be shared, by all means, let me know, because I think there's going to be opportunities for that throughout the summer. So welcome the opportunity to help you develop a lesson and to be able to share that with folks. Just so you know, the way that I'm looking over the next couple of weeks. Next week, we're going to look at the topic of gratitude. Next week, we're going to be studying gratitude in our lesson. The week after that, of course, is going to be a surprise, Church in the Park. I'm then going to do a lesson on significance. And it's been a long time since I have taught on significance, but I will tell you, I've had some new understandings of significance since the last time I taught this, which was probably back in 2020. And so, we look forward to that. May 9th, or June 9th is going to be a stunt double. And then after that, we're going to start looking at the principles of teamwork. I want to be looking at the principles of teamwork, especially as we move closer and closer to Camp for Kids this summer. So for those of you that haven't seen Camp for Kids, it's a sight to behold. It is an absolute sight to behold on how, just the number of kids that show up and how all the people come together. So I want to be talking to you about some biblical principles on how we work together as teams. And I don't know exactly how that's going to work out because I got more than a dozen principles I want to share with you, but we'll probably do those in batches. So that's the whole preamble this morning. That's what we're looking at here over the next several weeks. So I would tell you this morning, I want to just start out, the last couple of weeks we've been looking at the story of Jonah. And we're going to look at Jonah again from a little different angle here today. We're also going to look at Nehemiah today as we look at our topic. But I would tell you that when everything shut down with the pandemic 4 years ago, I had a bit of my own Jonah moment. I was like, what on earth am I doing? What direction am I going? And in those early days of the pandemic, it became painfully obvious that there was a huge lack of leadership throughout the world. I mean, that became very, very obvious that there was no organization on planet Earth, be it work, be it governments, businesses, you name it. Even within churches, we saw that there was this panic of what do we do now? What do we do now? And there was not anybody out there that said, oh my goodness, we have too many leaders to navigate through this new uncertain time. Nobody said that. Nobody said I said, I have been waiting for this moment my whole life, but it was because I didn't have to leave the house and talk to people. That was the moment of my life that I was looking forward to. But the reality of it is that nobody was prepared for it. And, prior to that time, I had spent, I think it was about 8 years doing a chronological study of the Bible. And some of you were with me for part or all of that. And we did a couple of different sideshows with that. We did the Gospel and the Stars, and we did a couple of things. And I said, "What do you want to do next?" And they said, "Hey, we want to go through this chronological study of the Bible again." And I said, "All right, we'll start." And we got started on that in late, I guess, in 2019. When we got to 2020. We decided we're going to redo the sanctuary. And if you remember, we were back in the gym for a little bit, and we were all crammed into one of those Sunday school rooms for a little bit. And we were doing some things. But when everything shut down, it was like, okay, things need to be done differently. And I started doing I actually did some lessons in early 2020 from my front porch. You can find those on the Facebook page because they were just recorded, right? And many of those lessons that I started teaching at that time, I started to give a little bit of a leadership flavor to. That was really where I started. And as things began to open up, when we had back to school in the fall of 2020, I didn't have Sunday school anymore. I had Monday school. Right, I would come here Monday nights at 7 o'clock, and I would teach a lesson. And there were maybe a dozen people. There was probably about a dozen people that started. By the time it was all done, that there had been some attrition to that. But what I started teaching at that point were the 21 laws of leadership. And from there, I went on to teach the 21 qualities of a leader. And that is, and I tell you this, and let me just try to complete the loop on my Jonah story, is that I've really felt that has been my challenge, and my call is to help equip people to lead others well. It's just that's been the challenge for some time, and there's part of me that ran away from it, and then in 2020 I said, well, start teaching it, and so that's when I started teaching it, and you all have shown up. And, I don't know that that's what I expected at all, but I want to just take a moment to thank you all for being here. Today, we are going to look at one of these qualities of leadership. And we're going to see how this quality is expressed through a couple of folks in Scripture, notably Jonah and Nehemiah. And the quality that we're looking at today is the quality called initiative. The quality of initiative. Now, before we get into that, let me just take a moment to remind you, if you are in this room, or even if you are not in this room, you are a leader. You lead people, right? And there's many people who are uncomfortable with that title, largely because they have experienced or they have observed poor leadership before in their lives. They have perhaps been led poorly. They had a boss that was a bad situation, right? There's something to it. So I want to just give you a simple one-word definition for leadership. And the one-word definition for leadership is influence. And I would ask you, have you ever influenced anyone, any way, anyhow? And I think we would all come to a quick agreement that yes, we have. Sometimes it's influencing a kid to eat their green beans or their peas or lima beans or whatever's on their plate, right? There's sometimes that's the influence, right? But we've all had that level of influence. Somebody says, I want to go this way, and you say, no, I don't want to go that way. And you start walking. I remember in college, there were, in this, let me just pause to tell this story. I had a friend in college who I think he was a little touched because he loved eating at the cafeteria. Now, I don't know how many of you would say, I cannot wait to eat cafeteria food. I picked Jess up from college on Friday. I said, hey, what about lunch? And he says, oh, I could probably eat. I said, you want to eat at the cafeteria? You know what his response was? No, I don't want to eat at the cafeteria. He said, I'd rather go get Five Guys, right? I'm like, okay, that's what we had to do. But my buddy was like, hey, I can't wait to get to the cafeteria. I'm like, you're a little weird, dude. You're a lot weird, dude, if you want to go to the cafeteria. I'm like, I'm going to Burger King for dinner. And so, he started going one way, and I started going to Burger King, and, I turned around, there's a couple other guys that said, we want to go to Burger King too. We're not going to go hang out in the cafeteria. Right? That was some level of influence that was being exerted there. So if you're able to influence somebody to do or to not do something, anything, I want you to know you are expressing leadership. And so because so many people have these, have these poor experiences, I want to begin to at least paint that this is the opportunity and the possibility for that to be better. So a leader is, so if leadership is influence, a leader is anyone who uses influence. Leaders use influence. And I'm not going to spell this next thing out because it's a little too long, but I do like the way that it kind of flows. Everybody has influence. We've all influenced somebody, so therefore we are all leaders. And as a leader is anyone who helps someone at some time get somewhere or do something. Right? A leader is anyone who helps someone at some time get somewhere or do something. Now, if you've been in this class for any length of time, you've likely heard that definition. So as we consider the quality of initiative for a leader, let us begin with a simple definition, right? Initiative means the capacity to start something. Initiative. Start something. Anything. If you have the capacity to start anything, this is a quality of a leader. Now, and as a matter of fact, that's what leaders do. Leaders start things. If you don't start things, you will become something known as a follower, right? A leader is going to get in there and they're going to mix it up. They're going to try something. And chances are they're going to have some struggle through that, right? But that's how it goes. Leaders understand that you cannot wait for someone else to start something. You look and you say, there's something that needs to be done. I got to do it. I got to do it. You have that initiative. Now, initiative means doing things, and I'm going to give you this just as there's three things. Initiative will require some level of risk. It will require some level of faith, and it will require, and that's not how you spell foresight. Foresight doesn't start with an S. Foresight. And some level of foresight, right? You got to be able to see things. You can see where things are going, right? And so as we look at this definition, those of you that have been with me here for a little bit, you know that we talked about the myth of risk not too long ago, right? We covered that topic. We've talked about we talked about the topic of faith last fall. You know, these are some things that we talked. I don't know that we've really done a deep dive into foresight, but these are the elements that go into initiative. Today we're going to look at a couple of people from Scripture, and we're going to see what we can learn about initiative. We're going to look at Jonah, and we're going to look at Nehemiah. We're going to look at Jonah, and Jonah struggled with initiative, right? He struggled to start and do those things that he was supposed to do. And in fact, what did he do? Whenever he was given that nudge, he recognized that there was risk, and he had some foresight of what that was going to be, and he decided to go in the opposite direction. He decided, I'm going to run. I'm going to do something different. And what he does is he tries to make it even harder to do what he's supposed to do. Now, we got to keep in mind that initiative requires risk, faith, and foresight. And for Jonah to go to another country to deliver the prophetic word would definitely be risky. It would definitely be risky. So let's read, if you would, with me. We're going to read the end of Jonah chapter 2 and I believe all of chapter 3 here this morning. Now, we've looked at this in the last couple of weeks, so this isn't going to come as much of a surprise to you, but it reads, "And the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land. Then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you." Jonah obeyed the word of the Lord and went to Nineveh. Now Nineveh was a very large city. It took 3 days to go through it. Jonah began by going a day's journey into the city, proclaiming, 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown. The Ninevites believed God. A fast was proclaimed, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth. When Jonah's warning reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne, took off his royal robes, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat down in the dust. This is the proclamation he issued in Nineveh. By the decree of the king and his nobles, do not let people or animals, herds or flocks taste anything. Do not let them eat or drink, but let people and animals be covered with sackcloth. Let everyone call urgently on God. Let them give up their evil ways and their violence. Who knows? God may yet relent and with compassion turn from his fierce anger so that we will not perish. When God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring on them the destruction he had threatened. Somewhere along the way, Jonah had to learn initiative. He had to learn how to stand in faith, in foresight, and to take risk. That's what Jonah had to do. He had to learn to do the right thing. And we've talked about this before. It is always harder to do the right thing. The wrong thing is, generally speaking, real easy. Generally speaking, the wrong thing is super easy to do, but the right thing is always harder to do. And when we talk about leadership, we talk about helping people get from where they are to some better place. And that better place is always uphill. When you lead somebody uphill, just think about this. So I live on Franklin Pike, and every once in a while, I'll make this decision that I should walk up my hill to the power plant at the top of the hill. And I did that Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday this last week. That was hard. I think Josh tried to run me off the road, actually. As I looked, did you see me walking up the hill? Oh, yeah, that was a high five. Okay. But I'm walking up the hill. I thought I could fall over dead here going up, because it was hard going uphill. Whenever I got home, and I don't know that I completely believe it, but I looked at my Fitbit and it said I had gone up something like 46 flights of stairs or something. It was, and I don't know if that's accurate or not. On one hand, I think it couldn't be that much. On the other hand, I could probably make a case that it should be twice that amount. But it's hard to go uphill. It's hard to go uphill. It's hard to do. Right? And here's the thing about the better things in life that we want. It's always uphill. It's always uphill. You want to have better relationships with your friends and your neighbors and your kids and your family, whatever. That's not easy. It's not with my family. I don't know about you. Maybe you all have better families than I do, but it's hard to have good relationships with my family. It takes some effort. It's some uphill work, right? But on the other hand, it's super easy to go downhill. When Josh drove past me, I could have just started somersaulting and I could have ended up in Sugar Creek, right? That's where I just could have just somersaulted the whole way down the hill. And I probably wouldn't have had to stop a whole lot, right? That's where we are. Now, to be fair, there can be many things that stand in our way of initiating, right? And these reasons, I'm going to give you 8 or 10 of them here. See if any of these seem reasonable to you. I don't know. Can you even see this in the back? Can you see this? All right. So the first thing is, you may not want to start something. You may not want to take the initiative because, one, what if you can't see it through to the end? I think I should start that, but, if I can't finish it, maybe I shouldn't even start. Does that sound... Okay, that's a few of you that resonates with, right? Some people say, oh, I could start that, but what if there's a better way? And I'm going to call that greener grass. What if there's a greener grass option? Oh, could I do that? Well, yeah, I could do that, but is this the best way? Have you ever found yourself oh, this is something that could be done, but I don't know if this is the best way to do it. I don't. That's one. Some of you are hesitant to start because you've had your trust violated before by other people that could be involved with this initiative. That sound familiar to anybody? That sound familiar? That maybe somebody did you wrong somewhere along the way. This one speaks a little too close to me too often. But every once in a while you get a case of the lazies, right? Or you're unmotivated. It's it's something that needs to be done, but I don't feel like mowing the yard. Whenever I was a kid, Whenever I was a kid, mowing the yard was prescribed to me by my dad. Jess, get out there and mow the yard. Now it's like I'll get up and I'll look out and I'll be like, looks like it could rain. It seems like a good day to not mow the yard. Or you can get up and you could say, oh, it looks like it's super hot. Maybe I shouldn't be out there mowing the yard today. Maybe I should wait. Like I can find an easy excuse. Now, as an aside, I would tell you that today I find few things as therapeutic as mowing the yard. I didn't like that a whole lot as a kid, but now I don't know. There's something about it that I definitely enjoy. What if I want to initiate something and people laugh at me? What if people say, you're going to do what? What if you say, I want to do something and you face rejection? Could that stop you from initiating something? Other people may say no. What if you're going to do something and it's going to take you into some space that is unknown? Well, I don't know how I've got here. I don't know where this is going to take me if I go and do this. The other end of it, what if I do this and everybody wants to be a part of it too? What am I going to do then? What if everybody signs up? Sometimes we won't start something because we're going to say this is going to be restrictive to us. If I go and I start this, it may restrain my freedom. Jess gets the idea, hey, I'm going to teach a Bible class on Sunday mornings. You know what that means? It means I got to show up on Sunday mornings and teach a Bible class. I don't have the same capacity to say it's raining this morning. It'd be a good day to just stay in bed and roll over. There's a loss of freedom that can come with initiative. You may stand out because of your initiative, but it may be you're going to stand out. You're going to be different from others if you have some initiative. Just as an aside, anybody willing to admit that they're different than others? All right. A few of you are sleeping, but okay, that's all right. We're all different. We're supposed to be different from others, right? God made us each to be the first us, not the second somebody else, right? And there's some times that we don't take initiative because we don't really know who we are. There's times we're like, I don't know if that really fits me. Who we are. Now, maybe you can add more reasons to this, but like these are things that can very much stand in our way from starting something. And maybe you can check the box next to multiple items on this list. I know I can. I know I can check I can put a check mark on this, but I just want to draw out that there's root issues behind these things, right? You may not start something because you don't know that you'll be able to finish it, and it's because you lack some security. You may say, what if there's a better option out there? What if I could do it this way? But what if there's really a better way that I could do that, right? And this is analysis paralysis. Paralysis. This is around decision making, right? You can find yourself in there. You may have had your trust violated before, and so you're dealing with some emotional baggage. You've got some issues that you got to deal with, right? You may not feel like it, right? You may be able to find a good reason to be lazy or unmotivated, right? And this can come from apathy around how you you really just don't care about it all that much. And it can become very, very easy just to check out and go from there. You could say, hey, what if people reject me? What if somebody told me no? That's a self-esteem issue. We've talked about that a few times over the last couple of months. What if, where it lost it? What if this takes me to a place I've never been before? What if this takes me into the unknown? That's a lack of confidence. What if everybody says, yeah, I'll come along, I'll follow you, right? And you might say, do you know who I am? Like, do you know the flaws that I have? This is the other side of the self-esteem coin, right? You can have too little self-esteem, right? Sometimes it's too much, sometimes it's too little. You may say, I may have to give up some freedom to do this. This is very much dealing with the idea of entitlement. That somehow you're a little bit higher on the totem pole than what you should be, right? You might stand out, or you're going to expose yourself to be different, and that can be difficult in a world of political correctness, can it not? And sometimes we don't even know who we really are, right? We just don't know, and that's because we don't know our purpose. We can lack purpose. And that can prevent us from taking this initiative. Whereas by taking the initiative, you may find that your purpose is revealed. Your purpose is refined, right? Now, Jonah likely dealt with several of these, right? He likely dealt with those, and again, you may have others. But instead, Jonah learned initiative by submitting himself to God. Once he surrendered himself to God, and he did that on the boat, right? He's going in the wrong direction. They're on the storm. Everything's going bonkers. And Jonah says, throw me overboard. He was submitting to God when that happened. And when we submit ourselves to God, we put our future firmly in His hands. And that's what Jonah did when he was thrown overboard. Once Jonah submitted to God, things started to change for him immediately, right? It started when he took responsibility. But once he submitted himself to God, you remember what the sailors did? The sailors started praising and worshiping God. What a wonderful thing to happen when you step into an initiative, right? Jonah had this God-given time and place to gain perspective, and as bizarre as it is, that was him being swallowed by the fish, right? That's what happened. He had this experience, right? Because of that experience, he was able to connect and worship God on a much different level. That's recorded in chapter 2 of Jonah. And then what happened was we progressed towards a new level of freedom. When Jonah was vomited out on the seashore, he now had freedom. He didn't have that freedom a few minutes before that. He now was given this new take on freedom. And then what he was able to do is as he went through Nineveh, he actually was working in partnership with God because he took initiative. And the end result, chapter 3, verse 10, it said, when God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring on them the destruction he had threatened. When Jonah stepped into his purpose, when Jonah took initiative to do the things that God would have him do, you know what he saw? He saw lives changed. I believe the book of Jonah records that there were 120,000 people in the city of Nineveh. I don't know if they all changed, but there were some number of them that did. And that happened because Jonah took initiative. So once we submit, we can have confidence in the risks we take because we're in God's hands, when God gives you that. Now, I had a colleague share with me earlier this week, just out of curiosity, by show of hands, how many of you are dealing with life? Like life's coming at you, and you're looking at this life that's coming at you, and there's part of you that just sort of groans and maybe shakes your head, and you're thinking, why on earth do I have to deal with this? And I'll use just the placeholder word nonsense. You're welcome to use whatever other colorful word you want to. Like, we're all dealing with stuff. We all are, right? And what my friend said to me, he said, you know, if we had God's perspective on this, if we could see things as God sees them, and you were able to look down and see you dealing with this, you know what you would say? He said, oh, that's exactly what he needs to go through. And that may be hard to understand, and I get that, but you know, there's part of the challenges, the part of life that we are dealing with right now, that if you were able to look at that situation, if you were able to just have a God's eye view of all those things that are going on, you would say, that's exactly what needs to happen right now for you to become the person that God would have you become. Even in the midst of challenge, even in the midst of turmoil, God would say, this is exactly where you need to be. This is exactly what you need to be going through. And that's tough. Isn't that's tough to see, isn't it? When Jonah embraced initiative, he witnessed spectacular results. When Jonah took action in the face of risk, in faith, and with foresight, spectacular results were observed. So while Jonah is going to serve as our initial example of initiative, we see how things can turn around when you embrace this quality of initiative. Like he became real miserable because he was not taking advantage of that initiative. But we're going to change gears here. We're going to look at this other guy. This guy's name is Nehemiah. Now, Nehemiah, in my opinion, this is exclusively a Jesse McCullough opinion. Take with this whatever you want to take from it. But I think Nehemiah gets way too little press. I think there's way too many lessons that we can learn from Nehemiah. And one of them is very much this quality of initiative. So let me introduce you to Nehemiah by reading Nehemiah chapter 1. We're going to start at verse 4. And we're going to go through chapter 2, verse 8. All right? So Nehemiah is recording this. He says, "When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Then I said, Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you day and night for your servants, the people of Israel. I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. We have acted very wickedly towards you. We have not obeyed your commands, decrees, and laws you gave your servant Moses. Remember the instruction you gave your servant Moses, saying that if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at the farthest horizon, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a dwelling for my name. They are your servants and your people, whom you redeemed by your great strength and your mighty hand. Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of this your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man. Nehemiah ends chapter 1 with a bit of a footnote. He says, I was cupbearer to the king. Now I'll pause here. Nehemiah has a place of prominence and importance within the king's royal court. He was the one that was supposed to make sure that the food and the drink was not poisoned. Like he's security. Like that's where he is. Now let's continue. Chapter 2, verse 1. In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was brought for him, I took the wine and gave it to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before, so the king asked me, why does your face look so sad when you are not ill? This can be nothing but sadness of heart. I was very much afraid, but I said to the king, may the king live forever. Why should my face look sad when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire? The king said to me, what is it you want? Then I prayed to the God of heaven, and I answered the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried, so that I can rebuild it. Then the king, with the queen sitting beside him, asked me, how long will your journey take, and when will you get back? It pleased the king to send me, so I set a time. I also said to him, if it pleases the king, may I have letters to the governors of Trans-Euphrates, so that they will provide me safe conduct until I arrive in Judah. And may I have a letter to Asaph, keeper of the royal park, so he will give me timber to make beams for the gates at the citadel by the temple, for the city and for the residence I will occupy. And because the gracious hand of my God was on me, the king granted my request. Now remember, initiative means you do something that requires risk, it requires faith, and it requires foresight. And if you make note, Nehemiah faced these things, but don't miss where he started. He knows that Jerusalem is in ruins. And his face can't hide it. And he's before the king. And the king says to him, why does your face look so sad? And he says, well, Jerusalem's a mess. And he says, what do you want? And for those of you who are underliners, highlighters, whatever it is that you do in your Bible, I want you to do this. I pull this out. Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 4. It said, the king said to me, what is it you want? What does he do? He prays. First thing he does, prays. He prays to God. And then he gives his answer, right? Now, you've likely heard the expression, all's well that ends well. Well, and I thought, we probably have all been programmed that way. We talked about programming here several weeks ago. But I don't want you to miss this one. Well begun is half done. Because Nehemiah starts his initiative with prayer, I'm going to suggest to you that that's where a lot of this comes. He says, I need a partner to go through this. He can say, you know what, the city of Jerusalem needs to be rebuilt. The wall needs to come back up. But what does he do? He says, I need a partner. And he says, I need the best partner. So what does he do? He prays. He prays. He prays. Because what Nehemiah faced was risky, required faith, required foresight, he went to God for help to form the plan. And in that time, what does he do? He asks for time off and he asks for supplies, right? And then he starts to recruit people and he starts to secure supply. supplies. But there was no hesitation. It's not like in this particular case, Nehemiah's in the far off land and he's coming back to Jerusalem. He didn't say, let me go in the wrong direction the way that Jonah did. He took the initiative. He took immediate action. And initiative enables leaders to take action based on intuitive cues. Now, I don't know that we've talked about this a whole lot. It's probably a topic that we need to add to the list to look at, but intuition, that nudge, right? There's some nudge that he gets, and I'm going to suggest to you that the nudge that we get comes from the Holy Spirit. Those nudges to do the right thing, I think those come from the Holy Spirit. And what does it do when that nudge comes to Nehemiah? He takes the action. He prays, and then he asks boldly for what he wants. He says, I need time off. I need to go do this. And you know what? I'm going to need some supplies too, right? When you start any initiative, when you initiate anything, I want you to know that you will not have all the facts for the situation. You won't. I don't know that it's possible, right? That's why the greener grass reason is up there, as you say, oh, maybe I could learn a little bit more. I could figure this out a little bit more. You need to recognize that you will not know all the facts. You may find yourself like Nehemiah, finding the situation is much more than you expected or imagined. If you continue on in Nehemiah chapter 2, Nehemiah gets to Jerusalem and he tours the city. And he's like, oh my, this is a little worse than what I expected. So when you take initiative, do not be surprised if things are worse than what you expected. As you learn more things, you'll be like, oh, I had never thought that this would be. There was a place that Scripture records that he couldn't even get his horse to go through, right? It was that torn down. Like he couldn't get through. So I want to wrap up today. I want to wrap up today with 5 qualities of initiators. And I think these are 5 qualities that will serve you well should you choose to adopt them. Number one quality or key quality of an initiator is that they know what they want. This is clarity. Nehemiah knew what he wanted. He wanted a wall built around Jerusalem. Second thing, push to action. Nehemiah recognized this and he says, it's got to start somewhere. And this is what you need to know, is that you will start most likely alone. When Jesus started his ministry, how many people were with him? On his very first step, it was just him. And what did he do? As he took steps, other people came alongside him. Whenever you take initiative, you will start alone. You will start alone. It will require that you take risks. Nehemiah asks for time off. He asks for supplies. Something else that you need to be comfortable with as an initiator is you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. And Nehemiah made some mistakes. If you were going to go rebuild the wall around a city, what type of people would you take with you? If you were going to go through potentially hostile territory, who would you want to go with you? And I think sane people would say it would be a great idea to take builders with me, and it would probably be a really good idea to have some type of soldier, some type of security type people that go with. And you know what Nehemiah took with him? And this is my interpretation of the story, but if you go in the book of Nehemiah, will tell you all the different disciplines of the people that he took with him. But I tell it this way: it's the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. He takes this odd bunch of people to go rebuild the wall. That probably made things a little more difficult. right? He probably could have taken some more skilled people that could have done that. But the fact of the matter is that, less experienced people will make mistakes. Whenever you have initiative, when you start some initiative, what you're going to find is that you're going to start off and you're going to have inexperienced people with you, and what inexperienced people do is they make mistakes. That's what happens. And initiators are okay with that. We recognize that we don't get to good without going through some of those different challenges, right? The last thing is they go with their gut, right? What is lacking in experience is made up by passion. There are some people who are so passionate about certain things that they're too dumb to know to quit, right? I mean, we've seen that. We've seen that, haven't we? Some people who are just absolutely passionate about those things that they would have, that they would like to see accomplished, those initiatives that they'd like to see completed. So I have two questions here that I want to begin to wrap up with here today. Oh, wow. Number one, what initiatives have you taken in the past? I want to encourage you to take inventory of what initiatives have you taken in the past. And I trust that you'll be able to make some type of list of that, of things that you have initiated before. Now, the second thing that I would have you do is I would say, what's the next initiative you're going to be a part of? What's that next thing you're going to start? And I want you to be thinking about that. And I want you to sort of tune your mental radar to that, to what would God have you do next? Now with that, and I didn't do this last week, and I kicked myself all week, but I'll put the letters ACT on the board. Right? Based on our lesson today, what action will you take? What change will you make? And is there something that you learned today that you can teach to somebody else for their benefit and yours? And with that, that is what I had prepared for you this week.